Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, David Wyatt-Hupton. David, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm pretty good. I haven't got COVID, unlike the majority of the Jets team, and it's Christmas Eve. So, yes. I'm doing a lot better than a lot of other people by the looks of it. So, how are you doing?
Yeah, just getting all the Christmas stuff sorted out. So, it's just like trying to balance everything. But
Are you a Christmas present rapper, or is Martina the
we
Christmas
both
present rapper?
pitch in wherever we can. Like whoever's free, who's got free time. I mean, I'll be editing this, and this comes out obviously on Christmas Eve. So by then, I should have all the presents. By the time you're listening, guys, I should have all the presents wrapped up. So if not, because we celebrate in my household, because I'm from I'm half Argentinian, so we do celebrate on the 24th as well as the 25th. So I've got to get all the Christmas presents under the tree by the 24th. And then they kind of get opened over both days, so it's a bit of a slog to this. Yeah,
That's too much pressure for my liking.
I know.
I haven't wrapped a single present this year.
Okay.
I'm awful at rapping though. Kay's such a good rapper, so I'm just like, yeah, you do that. You're really good at it.
You're really good at it. You need to learn.
Nah, I got my strengths.
That's it. Yeah, you do. Yes, your excellent writing. David's been killing it this week with his Jets Way stuff. So if you're not listening, if you're not reading that stuff, I've really enjoyed the stuff this week. Yeah, jump on that, jump on the newsletter, and that's some really good stuff that's getting out to you on most weekdays. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a patchy season with the Christmas days and stuff, but I'm sure that stuff's going to continue to pump out great stuff. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Jets UK Pod. Have a bit of Discord over everything's going to happen. We've got a few weeks left now. Where do we end up in the draft? Where do we draft? I think a lot of that depends on what's happening in our next game, whether it happens on Sunday or it doesn't. We'll talk about that in a bit. And follow us on YouTube and listen to the podcast on different podcast services. And we hear that on Spotify now. You can actually rate podcasts. So if you can give us a good rating on there, if you like the podcast, that'd be great because it boosts the algorithm. It's really good for listenership. So thanks for listening so far. If you're liking it, pass it on to any other Jets fans, and hopefully we have an exciting off season coming as well. So with that, we'll get into the news, I think. Okay, so for the news this week, it's basically the one word that we've been used to this past 18 months or 2 years almost, and that's COVID, right? And it's now hit the Jets in a big way. We've had, close to 20 players caught it, including the head coach, Robert Saleh, has tested positive. So Ron Middleton, the tight ends coach, will take over as acting head coach. If Saleh can't go, it's probably likely that he won't be able to with the time span. So David, who are some of the players that we are missing most likely for Sunday? Or maybe the game gets postponed. So that's another question. But right now, who's looking to be out?
The question is probably who's healthy at this point, because we've got a lot of people on that list. So Michael Carr II's on there, Ashton Davis, Fatakazi's on there, John Franklin Myers, Justin Hardy, Jonathan Marshall, Hamza's still on there, Sheridan Eastman's on there, Jeff Smith's on there, Elijah Vera Tucker's there, Kenny Yeboah's on there, and obviously Saleh as well. So it's quite interesting they chose Ron Middleton because he was obviously with the Jags, wasn't he, for the last 8 or so years. So it'd be quite, if he does get the chance to have a head coaching gig to play the team that kind of he's been with for the last 8 years, it's kind of a nice little story. But the Jags have managed to avoid. Yeah, as far as I can see, the update from yesterday was the Jaguars really don't have any COVID cases, so they've managed to avoid the outbreak. They've got a couple of injuries, but the Jets are struggling in a bad way with the virus at the minute.
It's likely, I mean, they could be even by the time, so we're recording this on the 23rd, by the time this comes out on the morning of the 24th, there could be movement, there could be more players, there also could be, the game itself could be suggested to be moved back to the middle of next week, like some of the games we saw in the NFL this past week. So there's a lot of movement. I mean, there could even be an outbreak in Jacksonville between now and when we record. So it's just such a fluid situation. Though it was like last week as well. with everything happening, it was like by the time we put out the by the time we put out the podcast, so many people had actually come back into with the new rules. So everything's so fluid. So yeah, follow the news obviously where you follow it, and obviously hopefully we'll see what comes with the game. It depends on your position whether we play it on Sunday, with one hand behind our back. You may prefer that if you want the loss. If you want us to have a good shot, maybe you want it to be a few days later, so maybe we get some of these guys back. David, what's your position overall on the game with this kind of debate about whether we should try to win it or whether we should try to lose it?
It's always a difficult one, isn't it? I can never get on board with losing games and wanting us to lose. We've seen enough losing for us not to actually want us to lose.
Yeah.
Obviously I would love a Kayvon Thibodeau if we got in the position for him, or an Aiden Hutchinson if we got in the position. And so it's kind of a win-win situation. But I mean, to win this game, let's say 6-3 or something, and Zach not to have a good performance, and it's the worst game. I mean, that's the worst of every single world. You get the win, but no one really feels good about it. There's a lot of your players are out, so you're not getting much development, and you're missing out on a bigger draft pick. And because I think sitting where we are in the draft stand at the minute, it's a bit of a no man's land. It's kind of, are you going to be forced to pick a player a little bit above where he should be picked because no one wants to move up? Whereas if you land in that top two, then absolutely ideal world, because I think everyone is expecting Hutchinson and Thibodeau to go in the top two. So I'm hoping for a win, because I want to see these young guys develop. I want to see Zach have a good game. I want to see Michael Carter have a bit of a bounce back game, because his stats actually looked a lot worse than I remember him performing on Sunday. I kind of remember him bouncing a few, and I don't know if he got caught behind the line a couple of times, because he kind of jumped forward a few times for some 6-7 yard gains. So I don't know. Can you really kind of hope for a loss, like, as a Jets fan? Can you?
No.
Like, what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I want the win. Like you said, if it's a poor game and we win and no one's played well, then I would not be really happy with that, because in that situation I would want to lose a poor game where both teams are playing badly. I guess if Zach plays well, I'm okay with a loss. If the defense just completely gets run over by James Robinson for 200 plus yards, and they win that way, and Zach himself has a good game, doing his own thing, then I'll be pretty happy with whatever. We just let it play out. I think the other thing we got to hope for is through the draft prospects. If we do, let's say we end up with the fourth pick through the draft, kind of through the combine and lead up to the draft, you really want, hopefully, that some of these quarterbacks kind of really start to rise up in estimation. That sometimes they come out of nowhere. Once the season's finished, people start looking at the tape and go, we're in the position to draft one. If one of those top teams could actually fall in love with at least one of the QBs, could be taken in those top three picks, then it would drop, hopefully, a really good prospect down to the Jets at 4. So I guess it's just, we just take it for what it is. And I think for me, just as long as Zach has a good game, we'll just let it play out how it is. And if we end up with a top 2 pick, then it's almost a no-lose situation if Zach plays well. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But we see this game is all over the place in terms of whether it sticks, whether it doesn't, and then what the teams are going to look like by the time it does start. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. We are going to preview the game later on in terms of the ins and outs and some of the players and the matchups and what we might want to see. But it's really at this point it's really hard to kind of judge who's going to be there, because if a certain player is not playing, it's going to change it. But we'll do a bit of previewing. But I'm going to we're going to head over to my chat that I'm going to have a chat with the guy from Jags Across the Pond. So we'll head to that right now, and we'll be back to preview the game later. Okay, so I'm joined by Jamie from Jags Across the Pond. Jamie, thanks for jumping on the pod with us.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, it's obviously a kind of I said to you kind of before we recorded, this game has obviously come at a kind of weird time for these two players. They've both been quite struggling. The two young QBs that picked first and second. We wished it was earlier in the season. It could have been a bit more fun, but it is where it is. teams who are really struggling to the finish line at this point, and looking at next year's draft also with some eyes of who might be where we might be wanting another player and where we may end up. So it's kind of these are the games that you can win that sometimes you don't want to, and it kind of can cost you a certain player and a prospect. So it's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, we're still here. We're still going. 3 weeks to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
We've just got
counting down.
exactly just getting across the line, almost there now, and then we can kind of look forward to the off season and some more
Yeah.
rebuilding. And obviously for you guys, we'll get into the whole season, everything that's happened this has been quite a big turbulent season for you guys. Before we do that, what's your kind of history with the team? When did you get into when did you become a Jags fan, and what was it that got you to be a Jags fan?
Yeah, so been kind of following the NFL for probably about 10, 12 years or so. Didn't really have a team to start off with. And then obviously the Jaguars came over to London, and I wanted to support an underdog. And yes, we was certainly an underdog, obviously in the first game in London. And that's when I chose the team. And I've been following ever since. The support has got a bit bigger over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, like collecting memorabilia and stuff as well. So signed memorabilia and like game worn jerseys and things like that. And then obviously most recently, obviously starting off at Jags Across the Pond. At the beginning of last season, just as a kind of a bit of a fun hobby during the lockdown era, just finding something extra to do. And here we are, we're kind of in crazy fan moment. I went to the airport when the Jaguars came over a couple of months ago and played against the Dolphins. Got to meet Trevor Lawrence and a few of the other players as well. I was one of the crazy three people who was actually at the airport to greet him at Heathrow at 7 a.m. and kind of followed him the whole weekend they're here. And every year it's just getting stronger and stronger. My kind of bond for the Jaguars, even if we are still losing week in, week out.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a Jets fan, I've been supporting them for 20 years, so that first 10 years was pretty good, leading up to those kind of
Yeah.
those playoffs with Rex and stuff. But the last 10 years has been a very similar journey, and we've been kind of bottom dwellers, like you guys, and kind of really rough seasons after rough season after rough season. So, and I think in the last five, it's kind of just been that way. We were 1 and 2 picking last year. We could be 1 and 2 picking this year again in the
Yeah.
draft, which kind of tells you all you need to know. Um, in terms of this season, obviously, we both picked a new head coach. We both went with the rookie QB at the top of the draft. How was your feelings about the Urban Meyer hire, knowing that you were going to land Trevor in the draft, and you had that as a kind of cherry, as a kind of carrot on the end of the stick for a coach that wanted to take the job? What was your feelings about the Urban Meyer hire when it first came across?
When kind of the announcements first came out about the chance of having Maya coming over, and I actually thought it was a pretty good opportunity for us. With Maya's obviously history in the college game and the the kind of the rapport he kind of build up with the younger talent. I think he would have. I personally thought at the very beginning he was going to be someone that was going to be great working alongside Trevor Lawrence, but how I was completely wrong, and obviously things started to unfold. Well, it all started as early as pre-season, which we only found out a week or so ago. How things happened and how it escalated. Um, I'm kind of shocked and kind of surprised, just because I thought Urban Meyer was going to be different to all the other college coaches coming into the NFL. But how wrong was I? A lot of mistakes have been made from the off, and I feel we're going into next season at the rebuild stage again, not 1 year in. So I
Mm.
feel we're kind of 3 years away for again still from anywhere kind of positive, to be honest with you. Whereas we should be at the end of that year one now, in my opinion, and we should be going into year two with 4 or 5 wins under our belts and a promising element to our team and a bit of personality. Because at the moment we don't have an identity. I can't tell you what our strengths are. I can tell you what our weaknesses are, and that's pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think personally I wanted it to work and thought it was going to work. We made quite a few gambles, even in the draft as well this season. We made a few gambles on a couple of the players who had come back from injury or hadn't played the last season due to COVID. And it's unfortunately a gamble that didn't pay off. The only positive I would take out from the Meyer situation was he didn't spend all the cash, which obviously was a good thing in some regards, because if you put some other coaches into this position, probably would have spent a hell of a lot more money, whereas Meyer didn't spend as much and only made a couple of big spends. That could have been down to the fact that players didn't want to come to us, as the NFLPA had strongly advised against coming to Jacksonville over the last few seasons with all the issues that have happened. However, we've still got a lot of capital going into next year, so it's ever so appealing for whoever the next coach might be, and I'm just hoping Shad Khan doesn't make the same mistake again and just some extra due diligence to get the right person in this season.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, I was not a fan of a lot of the moves that Jags made, with the fact that you had Trevor being this kind of beacon that you really could have attracted a lot of talent and coaching talent to the table. I thought Robert Saleh was going to be a guy that could have been there as a
Yep.
former coach of yours. Even though he had links to the Lions, I thought the Jags were one of the teams that would be in. The Jets were a big surprise when he came in, and we were very excited. But I just didn't like the idea. I thought Urban Meyer would struggle. Generally, that was my opinion. Just I thought he would be the college coach he's always done. He's very much, I just didn't see him being a guy who would break the mold from what I saw from a college coach. I think there might be some other college coaches that would give a better chance, but he was one that I didn't think would be one. And then I think things like like we don't know. And I love Travis Etienne in the draft, but James Robinson's a really good running back, and that second first round pick. You got to think about what's that use. I don't know. We'll see. We will never know what that was because of it. Obviously, Travis went out so early in the season. But there was just certain things that I just felt like you weren't really maximizing the opportunity. As when we looked at it, we were sitting in the driver's seat last year for Trevor for so long, and part of that
Yep.
was, well, it's going to attract a coach, and it's going to attract players are going to want to play in New York with Trevor Lawrence, and there was a kind of thought you could actually kind of maximize him being this kind of like prospect where you could, I never thought he was going to be as good as in some sort of magician who could just undo all the woes of a team. But I did feel that the reputation that he was coming in would be able to kind of almost have a sort of magician effect as well. But it's just not been maximized down in Jacksonville, and I feel that it's just obviously the coaching has just not been up to snuff, and I think like people like Darrell Bevel. And we know Brian Schottenheimer very well up here as well. It's just then these are not names that inspire excitement necessarily going into it from an outsider's point of view. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I think as Jets fans we've had a bit of a rough season, and so we kind of point at Jacksonville and kind of take a bit of like it's a bit of a salve to the kind of the pain that we feel because we know you guys are even worse situation. Obviously, and as you said, we are going to go into next season with all our pieces, with all coach intact and the offensive coordinator intact and all that. You guys are going to start again, so that's not great on Trevor. We learned that from Sam Darnold, that starting with a new coach and having to restart can really unsettle, and then you start getting into the end of the rookie contract, so it just gets a bit messy. So yeah, it's going to be definitely a big off season for you guys to hire the right person and make up for that mistake that it was in hiring Meyer. In terms of Trevor, obviously another thing that's been kind of a salve for our pain has been this record, especially with all the criticism that Zach Wilson gets, is this kind of recent kind of drought that Trevor's been going through. I mean, what do you think? How you feel Trevor has been throughout the season, and what's the reason for the kind of the lack of stats on paper from the last few months, I guess.
Yeah, so there is signs of brilliance there. Like he can release the ball fairly quickly. He has great pocket presence as well, and he also has legs when he's allowed to run. The first few games of the season, he wasn't allowed to kind of move at all, and that kind of shown when he had kind of clear gates to run 8-10 yards. He was just staying in the pocket. That obviously was an element from the coaching side of things, and probably due to confidence as well. However, we are struggling to score touchdowns, but we're not struggling to throw out interceptions. So I think it has been tough. Obviously, we've briefly touched on it with Urban Meyer and not having the right type of coaches kind of surrounding him and kind of giving him what he needs. we haven't had the weapons there. Also, obviously, we lost DJ Chark early on in the season. He probably would have changed the game massively for us, as he would have probably linked up quite well with Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones hasn't really lived up to the expectation in Jacksonville, unfortunately, this year. He is our leading receiver still. However, he's not been kind of getting those yards that we kind of wanted to kind of get out of him. And I think that's mainly down to he can't get himself open. We just haven't got those weapons there for him. I think we went into the off season with, I think we were in the before we cut down to the 53-man roster, we had about 13, 14 wide receivers. And obviously then we whittled it down to obviously 5 or 6. Obviously you took away our Keelan Cole, you took him from us, one of our great special team guys, and probably would have fit in quite well as a second or even third wide receiver for us this year, especially obviously once we lost DJ Chark. We expected Laviska Shenault to do a little bit more this year as well at wide receiver. However, he has dropped quite a lot and just really hasn't improved on what we kind of seen snippets of from last year. So overall, I'd say that, like I said, there is glimpses of Trevor Lawrence looking fantastic. However, he is also still overthrowing a bit. He is missing some wide open opportunities, but obviously that will come with rookie wide receivers. With rookie quarterbacks, obviously with the wide receivers. But I think they're just highlighted a little bit more because we're not making any plays whatsoever. So every single drop pass we have, every single incompletion we have is just highlighted, magnified even more because we haven't got any decent stats to go alongside it. We've not had a run game for a number of weeks now. We're not scoring any passing touchdowns at all. It's just, every single mistake just looks bleak and is just magnified furthermore. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is sat there leading with the most interceptions, with 14 this year as well. And he'd actually gone a good little run of 3-4 games without actually throwing a pick. However, a couple of weeks ago, obviously, he threw 4 in one game, and that could have come down to the reason for Urban Meyer sacking, and he might have just thrown a few risky balls for the sake of it to get that out there. But I can't really tell any more than that. I think there is glimpses, and I think there is promise and hope going into the next year. However, right now it's not looking good, and he just hasn't had the weapons surrounding him, I believe, and the support from the kind of the coaching team and stuff as well to get him where he needs to be. And I'm hoping he's going to be involved in some of the coaching hires going into the off season as well. He has expressed interest that he wants to kind of get involved with that. Because we need to get him back to winning ways and being confident in throwing balls and having receivers that can catch.
Yeah, I mean, about 90% of what you said just now is very much similar to what's happening with Zach Wilson, especially since we've lost our 2 main wide receivers in Elijah Moore and Corey Davis for the season. The last few weeks have been really rough in terms of there's no one open, and then the linemen, we've had some injuries on the line, so the linemen are struggling, and it's not happening for the QB, but also there's also not a lot around to support. So you're like, what are you going to do about it? It's like there's nothing going well. I mean, it sounds like a very similar story. And so I think the only difference is I think that the offensive coordinator for us is actually doing really well. Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother. He's doing a really good job generally. Not everything's perfect. I think he's still learning how to kind of optimize his play calling, but he's very creative, and I think that could be a key to the game in terms of being the difference is just a little bit of clever play calling, which I'm just not seeing from the Jags currently. It just seems to have no identity, and obviously I do feel, and he is, from what I saw, he didn't practice today. So I don't know if James Robinson was kind of struggling with a knee. I thought going into this game he could be a big key. Even when you're saying not running the ball, the Jets will allow you to run the ball. The Jets want you. They'll allow you to do anything on the ground. They really will. It's like unbelievable. So I really thought that was going to be a key to the game. We'll have to see if James Robinson can go. I mean, what do you think is the issue with the running game? You say it's slowed down. We know James Robinson's a good player. What do you think has been the issue with the running game so far?
So obviously James Robinson got injured in Seattle, and he came off the field there, and it's drastically declined from there. with also a few issues with Urban Meyer as well, benching him and then saying he's not responsible for benching him. However, it's come out since he's gone that he was the person that was benching him all the time because he had his trusty favourite in Carlos Hyde, who he wanted to share reps 50-50 with James Robinson. So we've had a few issues with that over the last few weeks. We noticed this week he did pick up against the Texans, a bit of a run game. I think he got 75 yards, but all of that pretty much come in the first half, and he just didn't see out he couldn't see out the full game. So he is still struggling with his knee. For the last 6-7 weeks of his injury, he hasn't been practicing all the way through till Friday, and then you won't see him practice till Friday, Saturday, and
Right.
that's been the case every single week. So he's not really he's getting limited reps when he's practicing before going out for games, but when he does get going, and once he does have kind of one explosive play, that's when you know he's going to go off for a pretty good game because that confidence builds. However, our O-line has also struggled as well in kind of creating those gates and getting him open and allowing him to bounce out over the last few weeks again, because we've been struggling with a couple of injuries on the O-line as well. Bit of inconsistency there. We've been trying out a couple of new rookie O-linemen as well over the last 2-3 weeks, which hasn't allowed our run game to really take off as it should. Last week it picked up a bit more, and we're hoping again it's just gonna rocket a bit more this week. Darrell Bevel has expressed that we are obviously going to be leading with James Robinson, and I'm pretty confident he will be playing this week. He did take another knock last week, however, he carried on continuing the game against the Texans into the second half, but just not as good. So, yeah, a mixture of James Robinson not being 100% and the O-line also not creating the gaps for us.
I can almost guarantee that he's going to have a good game against the Jets because we made Duke Johnson. We made Duke Johnson, and that Miami O line
Yeah,
is worse. Is almost as bad as our O lines. You know, it really is really terrible. We made them look great, and Duke Johnson looked fantastic. He looked like a Pro Bowler last week against Miami. So I'm sure James Robinson is a far better player than Duke Johnson, especially even if he's
yes.
injured. So he's gonna have a good game, and I feel that like that combination of, you know, if Mike LaFleur can cook up something interesting and Zach can execute and the offense can be okay, that's how we're gonna make we're gonna put up some points that way, and I think you guys will win on the ground. And I think it's whoever can be less terrible at defending basically will come
Yeah.
out and win this game. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, so it's interesting. They say this is why it's good to know because obviously we see DMP on the injury report for James Robinson going from limited practice to did not practice. It's good to know. Obviously, you're saying that this is something that's been continuing and that he's likely to play. So that's good to know for anyone listening. If you're looking at the injury report, you know that probably James Robinson will be there on Sunday or whatever day we end up playing.
Yeah.
In terms of the game, in terms of something you think might come, actually, before I go to the game, is there a player that we actually don't talk about? We don't know that the general NFL fan wouldn't know. They could make a big difference during the game.
I think this week we could see a shining Andre Cisco, who is a rookie safety kind of cornerback. I can see him coming in. He's going to get some reps over these last 3 games. A lot of Jacksonville fans, and Syracuse is where he came from. A lot of those fans have wanted him to come in and play from the beginning of the season. But now it's been kind of pushed along as we've obviously got the injury to Rayshawn Jenkins last week. He is now out for the season, so we can see Andre Cisco coming in this week. He made a couple of feisty on-field tackles last week against the Texans, which are looking great. He's played a lot of special teams for us this season, but I think he's going to be coming to get some more first-team reps as well. So he's a ball hawk. He has picked up quite a few interceptions in his college days at Syracuse, so I can see him playing really well this week. And if Zach Wilson wants to try some funny business, then I'm hoping that Cisco can kind of shine and use his first real game as kind of experience to use his ball hawk skills and hopefully get a pick off there.
Yeah, well, it's something that we have to watch out for, and Zach will have to watch out. He has protected the ball quite well the last few games. He's had his first 2 games without an interception, so he seems to be more careful right now. But they have to watch out for Cisco. I remember him in the draft last year.
Yeah.
In terms of something that could happen throughout the game, like a stat that you want to throw out there, what do you think is something that you want to throw out there for that?
I would like to see Trevor Lawrence throw over 199 yards as a minimum and actually get a passing touchdown this week. I think this is
The
the
low
week where we
bars,
might get a
right?
bit
The
of
low bars
confidence.
that we have for our teams, honestly, like over 199 yards and a touchdown. It's like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, but I do
yeah.
feel you. I know, like we have low bars because we're just like, please, just we'll put it here. Just an easy jump. Just make the easy jump, please. You know.
I just want a stat that I can say I got something right for once, because I've gone 2 seasons now where I've come out and said we're going to do this, we're going to do that, been optimistic like you would when you go at the bookmakers and you'd put a little cheeky bet on,
Yeah.
and it never ever come in. So
No.
I need something to say, you know what, it's going to come in, because 199 yards, what's that? Most QBs should be able to do that in the sleep week in, week out.
I would say the only thing that would go against that is how much running they should do. If they know what they're doing, they'll run the ball down our throats, and Trevor won't have to do that much. And our DBs have been, even though they're young and inexperienced, they're actually playing really well, and they've been one of the highlights of our team. So probably the only
Yeah.
good. So that could be one where you get maybe he gets that touchdown, but maybe he gets 180 because James Robinson goes for 200 plus on the ground. I really feel that could happen. So
Yeah.
and that's why,
It depends how you.
yeah,
I was going to say, it depends how you start the game, because Jaguars have conceded on every opening drive pretty much all this season. So, and we've already gone 2 scores down pretty much every game. When that happened against the Texans, we said we were going to run it down Texans' throat because they were one of the easiest run defenses to go against, and we was 2 scores down in the first quarter. So we had to pass the ball a lot more, and yeah, it's
we'll
the game script.
yeah we'll
Yeah.
see As I said, it's a fascinating game still. With Trevor and Zach in very similar situations, and where they come from and where they were picked, and that whole, and the Jets leading last year with Trevor. It's like there's just a lot of entanglement between the two franchises, and kind of weird kind of things going forward. So it's an interesting game. In terms of the score, you think that might take place? What are you feeling about? I mean, I guess, how do you feel about a win rather than just another loss and getting a higher draft pick? What's your feelings about that before we get to the score?
I first want to say thank you for giving us the higher draft pick last season. Obviously, giving us Trevor Lawrence, and going into this year, I can see it. We're going to be battling till that last game of the season. Who's going to get the higher draft pick? I don't know what we're going to look at doing with the draft picks if we do get first overall, because the Detroit Lions have bagged out a win now, and they looked quite strong over the last couple of weeks. So I'm fairly happy and obviously fairly comfortable with what we got last year. But obviously, I see New York Jets have obviously got a couple of draft picks in the first round this year
Mm.
coming, haven't they? So, so yeah, they're in another good, strong position to kind of excel. So, what was the question you were
I was
asking
basically
again?
saying, I was like, do you feel like you want to win this game? Because obviously, if you win the game, it
Yeah.
obviously lessens your chance where you lose that grip on that first overall pick. I mean, what's your feelings about winning this game versus kind of and having a good game for Trevor over maybe just having a loss and getting a better draft pick to try and get a better player at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are both going to just want to sling it out to see who can get the most stats and who can actually perform the best this week. So I personally I'd take the win. I don't think there's anyone specifically we want as the first overall draft this
Mm.
year. And if we was talking this time last year and we were in the same position and it was a fight for Trevor Lawrence, then I'd probably say, yeah, we'll take the loss. But I don't know how we'd feel if we take the loss this week. How our fan base has kind of had this penciled in as a win all year long from the very beginning. I presume your fan base has probably done exactly the same
Yeah,
and said this is the easy win, because obviously you've got the home field advantage as well.
yeah.
But this is the one that I think this could break a lot more fans if we go out and lose this, and if we lose it by a score and a half or a touchdown or two this week. I think this could break our fan base as well. So, and I don't think we're really looking for that tanking for the first overall pick like we was last year. We had the hashtags of Tank for Trevor going on for half the season after Minshew kind of went out and stuff. So
Yeah.
we've not really got that hype of tanking for that first overall. So I think I'd take the win this week, and I think Darrell Bevel will want to take the win as well.
Mm.
I don't think he's going to want to do what he did at the Detroit Lions. Obviously, he got one win and then he lost the last couple of games last season. So I think he's going to want to add something to his CV. I don't know if he'll think he's in contention to potentially becoming the head coach, but I think he's going to want to get a win under his belt as well. So I think we're definitely going out for the win, and it's certainly something that I want to get this week.
What do you think is the score going to be then? What was your prediction for the score?
So it's going to be a low scoring affair, I think, still, because we have still struggled to get the ball in the end zone and punch it in there. So, but I am going to go for a score of 17-14 to the Jags, so 2 touchdowns apiece. But I think we'll capitalise it off with a winning field goal.
Okay, so a close game. I think it's going to be a close game. And I asked the question about the whole position because obviously it's one of those situations where, once you've got the QB, you think, okay, who else is up the top of the draft? It's not going to be for the QB. And there's been a debate in Jets land about, getting one of those 2 top edge rushers that, everyone's talking about. So it's just been one of those, and we're sitting at 4. So it kind of comes into the question. I think everyone said what we don't want is we don't want the Jets to win like 6-3 where everyone looks terrible when we end up still winning. That's like the game that we don't really want. But I've always been in mind, just win the game and let's see if a few QBs delight Detroit a little bit and then some of those other players drop down. We'll see what happens. We'll see all that plays out in the off season. But anyway, Jamie, thanks for joining us on the pod for this week. And where can people find you if you want? There's many people who like to join and listen to other people from the UK NFL community. Where can people listen to your podcast and follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate the support out there. On Twitter, our handle is @JaguarsGB, and on Facebook and all of our podcast platforms is Jags ATP, which stands for Jags Across the Pond.
Brilliant. So thanks, Jamie, and we'll head back to me and David. Okay, so that's our chat with the Jags Across the Pond, and now we jump into our actual preview for the game, whatever that means. David, we saw some good stuff from Zach in the first half. Obviously, it was very difficult for everyone involved on the offensive side last week in the second half. What you're looking for. It's obviously going to be a lot more players out and things like that. But what we're looking for from Zach against this kind of poor Jags team.
I think a consistent 4 quarters is really what we're looking for from Zach. I thought he played quite a good 2 quarters against Miami. I thought his short area accuracy was good. His footwork looked a lot better. He looked to be more in rhythm with the actual offensive kind of game style. In the second half, he started getting hit a little bit more. And that is something you notice, and that happens with every single rookie quarterback. Probably in the history of rookie quarterbacks is when they get hit, then it sticks with them. They get a little bit frantic, and I think Zach did do that. Yeah. Once he started getting hit, he didn't trust his protection. When the receivers were getting open, he was hitching it and just not letting it go. So I think if we can see the same as kind of what we saw last week in terms of the short area accuracy, but maybe see him push the ball downfield a little bit. Jacksonville are not a good defense. I think I've had one game this year where they kept a team under 20 points, and strangely enough, that was the Buffalo Bills, which is just one of the most unique football games you'll see this season, I think. But they've allowed 30 points several times this year, so that they are a defense that we can get after them, and you can push the ball deep against them. So I think if we can get Zach, just to, we were talking about it. He started the season, he was a little bit of a gunslinger. He's playing a little bit of hero ball, turned the ball over a fair bit. He's overcorrected. He's gone quite conservative. It's good that he's not turned the ball over. I think that's a really positive sign for him. But you can't get rid of what makes him special, and what makes him special is that ability to push the ball down the field and in the off platform and find his receivers. He had a couple of opportunities against Miami which he missed, which I'm sure he saw on tape and just thought should have let it go. So I just want to see him just complete a couple of those. Like you said, nothing incredible. We don't need to see a 404 touchdown type game, but if we can see a couple of big completions, stay within the rhythm, keep that short area accuracy. I think it's going to be a positive for the Jets, and it just want something to build on, but it's not going to be easy for him. It's not going to be easy for him again. I hope George Fant's back.
Yeah.
He should be.
Please.
Because no one wants
George.
to see McDermott and Feeney on the left-hand side.
Right, if AVT's out, we're going to see Feeney, right? And then if Fant can't go, then it's going to be McDermott and Feeney for the whole game.
If it's McDermott and Feeney, then just play someone else. Play Mike White. play someone else.
Mike White, Joe
because
Flacco, whoever you want to be
that
the backup.
quarterback's going to get killed.
Yeah,
and that's that's not meaning to be disrespectful. They don't listen to it, so I'm sure they don't care. But it's not being disrespectful to McDermott or Feeney. But there's a reason why they haven't played a massive amount in the league recently. And you add that with the rookie quarterback. If you put Flacco behind there, he probably gets the ball away quite quickly because he knows he's got 2 seconds to get that ball out. But rookie quarterback's mind don't really work like that. So, I'm worried if that's the protection he's going to get, and he's got Denzel Mims and Keelan Cole and Crowder to throw to. I mean, it's not going to be it's not a positive for a young quarterback. It's not a conducive environment to make progression. So that's going to be something to watch out for.
Yeah. I mean, the way that Keelan Cole and Denzel played last week, the names carry a bit more, you would think, quality in terms of what you think of their play, but actually that they didn't play well last week. Keelan Cole hasn't really been as good since he came back, and Denzel's obviously is struggling a lot. And it is very much reminiscent to the situation where if it is going to be Feeney and McDermott, then you're thinking bad O-line play, bad wide receivers. It's back to where Sam's rookie season, where there was just not a lot around him. So Zach might have to do a bit more himself. We saw a bit last week where he was kind of making plays off the cuff, and we may have to see that more. It's just going to be an interesting game. How does he manage it in the conditions? If he can have a good game with the current situation that's happening, that's a big positive. We don't know in terms of the running game. Obviously, Michael Carter, I think the second has got the COVID, not the first one, not the other one. So I think running game. Obviously, we want to see him hopefully have a bit better of a game this week against maybe a worse defense than Miami. And we don't know about the O-line, how it's going to look, because obviously there's people who are injured / COVID. It's a lot moving around, but you just want just a little bit more of a even performance throughout the game, and not just go to absolute. It just went all the pot last week. I mean, in the second half, just everything just disintegrated. After the first half was quite promising, so hopefully a few more trick plays maybe from LaFleur. A few more things to kind of keep them off balance, the Jags defense, and let's see how that goes. Now on the Jets defense and trying to stop this Trevor Lawrence attack, which has been pretty fruitless. I back him to probably score a touchdown for the first time, obviously against the Jets, just because he hasn't done it for nearly 2 months now, or is it 2 months now, something like that. It's been a long time since he's scored a rushing or throwing touchdown, which is a crazy stat. And it's a bit of a thing that we kind of it's a bit of a crutch that we have with whole Zach's performance. Like, well, look at Trevor Lawrence. He's not doing anything over there. His situation's really bad as well. So, what are you seeing from this Jags offense? Probably not much, but what are you seeing about them against our not much of a defense that we have right now?
Yeah, I mean, that the defense could look pretty rough by the time Sunday comes around, and considering they're already giving up 30 points a game, it could get quite messy because for everything that Jacksonville aren't doing, they do have a good running back in James Robinson, and we have had absolutely no luck stopping anyone. I mean, Duke Johnson looked like one of the best running backs in the history of the NFL last week. So, we've got significant issues stopping the run, and Jacksonville when they want to, and for some reason Urban Meyer just did not want to run James Robinson, and that's probably why. Well, it's not why. There's several reasons why Urban Meyer's out of a job, including kicking people and frolicking with some college students in some Ohio bar. But not running James Robinson was just the whole Jacksonville setup with taking Etienne when they had Robinson and not giving Trevor Lawrence more protection or more weapons. It was mind-numbing at the time, and it just looks that way now. I've watched a fair bit of Trevor Lawrence in preparation for this, and I don't think he's playing as bad as maybe his stats would indicate. I think he's showing a considerable lack of touch. I mean, we touched on this off air, but he tries to rifle every throw in at 100 miles an hour, and he doesn't have the receivers that can handle that kind of heat, and nor should they on certain situations. But he gets through his progressions well. He has got an absolute rocket of an arm, so if one of their receivers manages to get in behind us, he probably will find him. So, I think they'll run James Robinson a lot. We'll have to show that we can stop him. When we do stop him, Trevor Lawrence will get some success against us. I think against our linebackers, they are going to have a little bit of success.
Yeah.
It's just quite an interesting one. And, everyone's building this up as the Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson kind of showdown. But, I don't think either one of them are at the point where they're going to be in their careers. Either one of them are playing to the high standards that they can play to. So it might be really disappointing if you're expecting this good old-fashioned Western shootout against, between Lawrence and Wilson. I think it's going to be one on the ground.
It's a shame that it's like I was saying to Matt, we talked about on Monday's show. It's a shame this game was so late in the year. I think it's a misstep from the NFL. They should have scheduled this as one of the earlier games, so both teams were, even if they had come in with a couple of losses, they were still mathematically in it. It was still early in the season, and there could be a lot more excitement about this game, even if it was two kind of young QBs making mistakes. That the anticipation and the excitement around the game would be really high. I think league wide. Right now, no one cares about the Jags and the Jets except for Jags and Jets fans. So it's kind of like whatever. If this game gets moved, it'll be funny if this game gets moved to midweek, because then it's going to throw it into more of a primetime island situation, and then everyone's going to start watching it, and that's going to be quite fun actually. When the whole NFL community starts getting watching the Jags versus Jets, so that'd be quite an interesting spin if it does get delayed. And I wouldn't put it, it's very, for me it's quite likely. I think it's a 50-50 now at this point where we're recording on the Thursday, so we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think our cornerbacks going back to our defense. I think our cornerbacks played well last week. If they can do a good job, kind of keep limiting options on the outside, and we can focus on trying to keep the middle as secure as possible, and try not allow James Robinson to do too much. We say this every single week. They allow whoever wants to do whatever can do whatever they want. Hopefully, one of these weeks they'll be able to actually just stop them, from just doing whatever they want. So I don't know. At this point, it is what it is. At this point in the season, we're kind of seeing how it plays out, and it's all about the draft spots and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, is there anything you want to say to wrap up this show? Because it's, like I said, it's such a floating thing right now. By the time we get this, I might have to record some other kind of tidbits to kind of say, oh, well, before we recorded, we said this, and this, but like so much might change. But is there anything you want to say before we head off?
No, I don't. I think just stick with the patience of the rebuild process. I'm doing a mailbag on the Jets Way tomorrow, and some of the questions are asking about should we move on from this person or that person. And it's kind of like, this rebuild was never going to be about 2021. It just wasn't. So we do have to stick with it, whether that's sticking with Zach, whether it's sticking with Salah or Ulbrich, and those are the guys who get mentioned the most in terms of what can we do to improve those situations. I think it's just important to remember that, especially on the defensive side, we didn't invest heavily in it last year. That the whole process last year was improving the offensive side of the ball. And with everyone healthy, and if Zach reaches his potential, we've done that.
Yeah.
The one investment we made on the defensive side of the ball was Carl Lawson. We haven't seen him all year, so conceding 30 points a game, it's frustrating. It's not ideal. Obviously, Jeff Ulbricht's not going to find that acceptable. Robert Salah's not going to find that acceptable.
No.
But I firmly believe this offseason is going to be the offseason of the defense. I think we'll drop into free agents. We'll heavily invest in some top end draft talent on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, last year Sherwood was our first pick at 150 something. So
yeah,
that shows you we just didn't prioritize that in the draft, and that's because it wasn't a 1 year rebuild. That's because it's a multi-year rebuild. So just stick with it. Like we were saying, we've got cap space, we've got draft picks, we've got everything we need to make this offseason the one that bolts us back into contention for playoffs. I don't think we'll get to a Super Bowl roster next year. We could do, but I doubt we will. But we could get back into playoff contention. I think, after the last few years, that's all we want. We just want to be talking about meaningful football games in December instead of should we lose this game to get a better draft position. If we're not talking about this next December, we've made progress.
Yeah, if we're a 7-7 team by this time next year, I think that's pretty good. Going into the last few games, trying to again push into the playoffs, that would be progress. Obviously, we'd want more, but we just want to see progress. I think, they went offensive heavy this season. I think it was the right call. You're taking a QB, you want to surround them. and then and kind of give him as many high quality players around him as possible. Then maybe hit on a couple of players in the later rounds, which we did, I think, with Michael Carter the second. I think Brandon Eccles is a very good depth piece in the cornerback room, and so I think overall I'm pretty happy with the plan. It's obviously now we're seeing a lot of injuries and some kind of play that's not as good, that's kind of made it what it is. But I think overall, if we kind of pair last year with this year, like there's two parts, I think it could be quite a good 2-year kind of rebuild with this new staff. If you include like just this staff and the kind of this nucleus of Salah with his team and Joe with his team, I think all those together, it's a 2-year rebuild to get it from where they were after Gase left to where we want to be, which is kind of knocking on the playoffs. I think that's where we can be. So fingers crossed. Like I said, we have a few weeks left. We're recording this now before Christmas. Guys, like I said, all I said before, join us on social media, follow David on the Jets Way, sign up to his newsletter. It's all good stuff coming from our team. We hope you have a really good Christmas. We hope this game happens sometime. I think it will probably happen on Sunday. If not, it'll be a midweek game, and we'll be back to preview it after it finishes, whenever, we don't know. So we'll keep an eye on our social medias. We'll update in terms of depending on when that happens. It's a bit of a fluid situation. So hope you guys have a great Christmas. David, is there anything you want to say to the listeners before we head off?
Just send us your best Jets presents. I'm always looking for inspiration on how I can fill my home with the Jets tit-tat that you get over in the States. So send your best Jets presents to the pod account, and we'll check them out. And if there's anything special, we might mention it on next week's pod. So just get them in and have a great Christmas.
Absolutely, have a great Christmas, guys. We'll be back after the game whenever it takes place. So enjoy Christmas, and we'll see you next time.